Now, hopefully, you all can hear me. I have absolutely no idea. Jeff, you're the only person. Oh, Peter, I trust you too. Dave, West Coast. Wow, Mikhail, the four people I actually trust in a row. Let me know if you can hear me. I lied to this guy, told him I'd bring him on right away. He's in the back looking at me, pretty funny, shaking his head. There's going to be a lot of that tonight. But you are here for another collector talk, and for someone to spend 2 hours aggrandizing everything that they've ever done in their life to get to this moment and built their unbelievable collection. Is that pretty much how you feel about it, Steve? Steve, you know what? I'll say it right away. You look like you're in your mom and dad's basement.
You can hear us, hit that dislike button, slam that dislike button. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm traveling. I'm visiting my family in Chicago, and I'm literally in my parents' basement.
Yeah, and you're not in Chicago. You're like David, where he thinks he's in Indiana.
I'm in suburban Chicago. My parents, they did move houses, but they did not throw away all our comics, and we have them all here in this basement, which is awesome, including here. Look.
You're starting with the big stuff.
I'm starting with the big stuff. This is
starting with First Comics.
You're afraid of AI. First Comics, which is located in Chicago.
I mean, that looks like it was made with
AI. Computer. This is like, you think AI was bad? Like, check out Shadow was completely off the Macintosh computer. So all my comics are here. Everything's here. Look, I was a Peacemaker way before the TV series.
How do you
I bought all the good stuff.
How do you get grown up on that kind of garbage and not even collect DC comics?
I know. Look at this. Come on.
No, you're not kidding. Yeah.
I mean, okay, look, there's some good stuff here.
Oh, okay. What issue? Number one?
Number one.
That's
I know Boy has the cover, but I got this. And also, Andrew Allen, you're there?
Good Grimjack.
Yeah. Okay.
And remind me, where was First Comics? Were they in the city limits of Chicago, or were they up in the boondocks up north where you and I grew up?
I think they were downtown somewhere. Their address is probably in the comic somewhere. Let's take a look. Rick Obadiah, the publisher, Mike Gold, and managing editor.
Yeah.
Evanston.
Oh, no kidding. Evanston. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a little closer to you than me. Sean Lankey.
So this is from 1985. Yeah, they were in Evanston.
85. Sure. Yeah. First Comics was historically important.
Totally. Yeah. They were at Comic-Con this year. They had a small booth. They're still.
You're kidding.
Active. Yeah, they were.
What did Dinesh buy him or something? Who's resurrecting him?
Dinesh bought the right company to resell. Had he bought First, he wouldn't be a big first appearance player right now.
Honestly, who's running First Comics now? I had no idea.
I'm not sure. They were there. I think there's a lawyer, Ken Levin, who actually works with Nick Berushi on the Boy Show, and I think Ken works with First Comics. He's from the Chicago area, but I'm not really sure who's. But First Comics, they're doing something. They had a booth.
Hey, there's a question right away. Do you have any idea what Andrew is talking about? I have no idea what he's talking about.
No. Where I got to scroll up on this thing.
If you look on your screen,
I know Bill brings them up. Oh, well, we can see the Chuck Norris cover.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
I mean, I bought the New Mutants cover earlier today, and I was going to premiere it on the show.
The New Mutants cover, like which Bill Sienkiewicz cover did you get?
No, it's New Mutants 98. I did a 6.5.
Wait, New Mutants got up that high? I thought they canceled at 97 or like 95.
Too soon.
Too soon,
man. Come on. It really started with 98, with 87, actually. I got it right here in my parents' basement. I got it.
You got it.
So I'm just in town visiting. I thought, this is a cool. I set up here in the basement. Look, it's got an authentic.
No, you're spreading rumors now. If you have
authentic Chicago crawl space.
See that? You see that? That's where Steve Davidge would sleep when he visited. Yeah. You're spreading rumors about that cover now, because if you have it on you already in Highland Park, it means that it was never for sale from Heritage.
It went. I sent it. They had it sent directly to Rob Liefeld, who's going to re-ink it.
Liefeld. Oh, you've been talking to Anthony. His name was, what's his name again? Say,
Liefeld.
thanks.
Is
Anthony.
it? I see him at the shows. I love his enthusiasm for the hobby. I mean, I'm a fan of his stuff. Like, I love that he collects comic art. I saw him at Comic-Con. But it's Liefeld, right?
I think he prefers Liefeld. Yeah. But Anthony's trying to change that one video at a time. Go check out his Instagram. Oh, what? There's more stuff here. Wow, you guys are chatty tonight. When the Bill's away, the chat. Ooh,
Yeah.
look at
Marcus, get back on CAF and keep commenting. Do you have time to do the watch us here? But thanks for coming. There's a lot of people here. Andrew Allen's here. Someone had a question. The Kirby Museum or something?
The Kirby Museum. Wow. But the Kirby Museum, actually, they asked a legitimate question. They're not into the vibe. We're 6 minutes in being clowns.
I know. What's your favorite Kirby? Okay, so when we go through, I did select a piece, and
Yes.
I would. Not only do I have that piece, I have another thing in addition to that piece. So we will get to it. I don't want to, I'm not sure what Andrew was talking about Chuck Norris cover, but we will get into my favorite Kirby piece.
So you actually have a favorite Kirby page? That's pretty tough. Yeah. Hey,
the Kirby piece, you have it. I sent you 2 images, and you'll see that one of them is my favorite Kirby piece, right?
Okay. Here. Is it your favorite Kirby piece that you own, or your favorite Kirby piece, period, which would be impossible?
I guess that would be impossible.
Yeah.
But the favorite Kirby, I have a, I mean, spoiler alert, like I have a photo. I have a photo, like, actually taken with Jack Kirby at his last San Diego Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first San Diego Comic-Con. So I met Jack Kirby in 1993 at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah,
so,
you have
that. Personally, like, that's my favorite piece. Like, I have a photo with Jack Kirby. So.
Yeah, you haven't aged much. I noticed that. I don't know.
We'll compare it when we get to that. We'll compare. Living out in California, it's just easy. So I just.
Marcus, you're 100% right. I have a couple of new shirts, and I'll wear the other one on Thursday. Marcus was nice enough to give me a shirt. I looked through it. I looked for problems with it. I looked for razor blades. I looked for all kinds of stuff. There was nothing in it. But so thank you, Marcus, and I'll wear it Thursday. And Peter, we'll get to that. Peter's already asking about Russ Heath and the Playboy Mansion. Who doesn't want to know about some stories about the Playboy Mansion?
Russ was a dear friend of mine his last decade, and we spent a lot of time together in Los Angeles. But I wish your show was around, because to have interviewed him and hear his stories. I mean, it would just been great to have documented everything. What a life the guy lived.
We'll get it. I met Russ a couple of times. When the New York shows, when they were at the Penn Hotel, maybe 2000, I'm going to say 2006 or so, Russ was there. And the very attractive girl next to him, which was 100% his girlfriend, couldn't have been older than 30. And, he already looked like a dead Abe Vigoda.
Oof. Okay.
I know. Was that mean? I can erase that one.
Yeah.
He looked like
we're all. He lived in '91, and
he looked like a peak elderly.
He was still drawing, and he was still,
Oh, the guy stared me down. That guy looked like, he was tough.
But the story is that he was doing Little Annie Fanny with Kurtzman and Elder, and Kurtzman had to move out to it was tough to produce when they're all living in different places. Russ came to the Playboy Mansion. They all worked together, and Russ just stayed at the Playboy Mansion. No one told him to leave. So he ended up just living there and working there. No one told him to leave. And Russ would show me all these Playboy magazines, not for the nudie stuff, but they had photos during movie night. And it was like Zelig or Where's Waldo, in all these group shots with a lot of famous people. Russ was always sitting there, very dapper looking, very handsome, sitting at Hefner's movie night. He was friends with Hefner and just sort of a mansion regular. And it's just amazing that, and this was in Chicago, the mansion at that time in the late 60s. The mansion was in Chicago, and Russ, lived at the mansion. And he worked at Little Annie Fanny. He was drawing Our Army at War for DC, 2 different jobs. Kubert would kind of get on his case for deadlines, but I think, every time Russ turned in the artwork, they were all so impressed when it came into the office. They were just wow, he didn't slum it on any page. you know, and he was buying like military fatigues. Like there was no internet or reference material. So he would go out to the surplus stores and buy everything. And we'll show some of the stuff later. Like he would dress himself up as a soldier, and he would have one of the Playboy photographers after hours, like shoot Russ and other people like dressed up as soldiers for the work on our Army at War. So, you know, he was working all the time. So he wasn't doing Little Annie Fanny, like he was doing the stuff for DC and living at the Playboy Mansion and going to movie night with Hefner, you know. And also, you know, I mean, it's, you know, he later in his life, there was a singer that was at one of the lounges. Her name was, I can't remember. He was always talk about her. And like, I tracked her down like 50 years later on the internet. I thought she was living in Mexico and she was still alive. And she was in LA at some point. And Russ, I mean, maybe 6 months before he died, I have a video of them and they met up and chatted. It was like 50 years later, because Russ was always talking about this woman who he dated back in the day and was a singer at the Playboy clubs in Chicago. And so, you know, Russ didn't use the internet. So I found her, and she was living in Chiapa, Mexico or something like that. And she was in LA at some point, Southern California. And I got them together. It was great. I did this a couple of times. It was like, yeah, like he'd always talk about some other artists that he worked with. And he'd mentioned J. Scott Pike, you know, that he was good friends with him like over 50 years ago. I'll get into this when we get to the Dolphin cover, but then I found out Jay was living in Florida, and I put them together on the phone. You know, it was great. I mean, it was just like, you know, he's reconnecting. It was like he would talk to these people, and it was like 50 years had elapsed, and it was like no time had passed. They would just chat away on the phone. So it was nice because he wasn't driving, and he wasn't.
Russ did draw that. He did draw that ad, didn't he?
Yeah, he's done some recreations of that. He was paid. He did two of them: the Roman soldiers and I think the Revolutionary soldiers, and he was paid $50 for each of them. And honestly, like those are his two, probably of his. I mean, aside from everything Lichtenstein ripped off from Russ for Wham and stuff like that, Russ's probably most iconic things were the back cover of. If you look at like Sea Devils #1, the back cover is that Roman soldiers thing. Like Russ's two things were super iconic.
Should you wait 1 second? Yes, what would you like, Jason D'Ambrosio? I'm answering the phone because you're calling me during the thing. You're here in the chat. I guess you're not getting enough attention, right? Is something wrong? Are you okay? I'd like to know that first. Hey, wait. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna put you on speakerphone. You want to say something? Go ahead.
Let me just mute you in the background, Kaz. Good job, buddy. I'm really proud of you for starting on time, unlike Bill Cox's normal nonsense. And I expect a mask of some sort during this interview.
A mask of any kind. A mask of. Let me look around. I might disappoint you and all the ladies out there, but there are no masks around me. But I will look. I will look. Good talking to you, Jason.
You too, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. I apologize to you and the resting soul of Russ Heath during a very nice story.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was, you know, full of great stories. I mean, he worked, his first job was with Stan Lee. I mean, it's all very well documented. There's a book, Flesh and Steel, which came out after his art show in Palma de Mallorca in 2013. Very inclusive. It talks about Russ's whole life. He was very touched by that art exhibit that they did in Spain. They did Kubert last year. I sent you guys the video of that art exhibit.
Yeah.
Russ didn't make it to the show. He was just too old. I went, and it was great. Like the news was there, and they covered me on the news. They're like, friend of Russ Heath. Like, you know, there was his family didn't go. I was the only one who like went of like the collectors. But it's great to see the Europeans appreciate American artists. It was over 100 pieces by one artist. They've done Ditko, they've done Romita, they've done Buscema. They recently did Joe Kubert. Russ was the first one who was actually alive. So I took a lot of pictures and video and brought it back. And it was just great. I mean, to share that with him and then to see the art book completed, it was like, he was very touched, and it's great. And it's pretty comprehensive on his entire career in comics, which a lot of these guys, like it's amazing that we're still talking about them now. Because I think, you know, they did these jobs. We've talked, like, they were sort of slumming it in comics and really doing a lot of stuff for commercial. So in the commercial world. So like, to be appreciative in the comic art world might be kind of a surprise for them, later
The
on.
good, there's going to be a lot more of that moving forward, and I'm glad that Russ got that to happen while he was living. Everyone seems to be really good at doing that after people pass. But Flesh and Steel, if I heard anything from all that, is that it's a worthwhile and great book. I haven't read it. Flesh and Steel. Okay.
Yeah. So
Russ was involved with that one. He was involved with making it too. He was interviewed extensively, all that stuff.
Yeah, and any sales of that book will go to Russ's estate.
Okay, there you go.
I think IDW put it out. They put it in conjunction with all the art shows, so it's like it's really good. And it's like it's been vetted by the artist himself. Was like, everything was really great. He was very touched by the whole thing. We are 16 minutes and 20 whatever seconds into this, and I'm supposed to start by saying, where are you from? What's your origin story? All that. Let's get that out of the way, and then we'll move into some of this stuff. So, were you actually born in Highland Park? Well, I was born in Skokie, Illinois.
Oh, Skokie, nice.
Skokie Valley Hospital, and then I
used to live off of Dempster in Evanston, just over the border from Skokie.
That's funny because I'll talk about it. There was a comic shop that's on. We used to ride our bikes from Highland Park. It was 10 miles each way to go to Dempster west, and there was a comic store right off the off ramp. Like I saw Ron Sonenthal yesterday, and he would also shop there, but we can't remember the name. I guess it closed in the early 90s. But in the 80s, I would ride. My friends would ride from Highland Park, and it was kind of a wild ride. It was like 10 or 11 miles. We were kids riding out to this store.
You drive it. Would you ride along the lake to stay a little safer?
No. We were going. Yeah, we were like not far off the frontage road. It was kind of we didn't. Maybe we looked on like a map and then we sort of just would bike it. It was like we were like an ET or Stranger Things, riding our bikes around.
Yeah, you're still riding your bike. I didn't go.
Yeah, that's different thing.
I didn't go to comic book stores on Dempster. On Dempster, I went to New York Bagels and Bialys. Yeah, that was the reason to go to Dempster.
Store I'm talking about on Dempster? It was like
I don't remember that one.
If you're going south into the city on 4194 and you get off at Dempster and going west away from the lake, it was like it was right off it was right there.
No, never went to
so that was sort of the first one I would travel to. Others opened up closer to me, like Deerbrook Mall in Deerfield was Moondogs, which was a pretty big chain.
Moondogs was a great chain. I rode my bike to Moondogs in Libertyville. Yeah, and they had a Dairy Queen across the street, and for $1.06, you get a Mr. Misty float. They're not called that anymore.
Dairy Queen's still around. So, anyways, I grew up in the suburbs here of Chicago. I'm not gonna say I grew up in Chicago because I know people who grew up in Chicago are like, you grew up in the suburbs.
Did you pay taxes? Did you pay city taxes? No. Right. So I'm
in Lake County. Growing up, this is where they shot all the John Hughes movies. Risky Business was shot here. A lot of Risky Business was shot here.
Breakfast
Club, Ferris Bueller, like the Porsche going into the ravine out through the garage. That's on the east side of Highland Park.
Yeah.
So every summer there'd be a movie filming in Highland Park. It was a John Hughes movie, and then the next 9 months later we go watch it in the theater. It was like an event, like going to the movies. And John Hughes was like legendary for everyone of my age group, especially growing up out here, because he grew up out here and was filming them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, also shot here. So a lot of great movies. It's 16 Candles, also shot around here. So
Home Alone, yep.
Home Alone house
was Wilmette, yeah.
Yeah, that house I think was recently sold.
Yeah,
definitely the whole Guido the Killer Pimp chase scene. That's all downtown Highland Park, Illinois. That's where I grew up. I went to college in Wisconsin. Always reading comics when I was younger, riding my bike to that comic store, going to Moondogs. The Chicago Comic-Con was probably my first big Comic-Con, 1985, Americana Congress Hotel.
Okay, I wondered. I didn't go back then.
So we didn't have a driver's license. My friend, same guy I would ride the bicycle with, we would ask his dad to drive us there. And I remember walking into the room, and it was, we all get that feeling like comics, like everywhere, no thought of like comic art. The big deal was like, get your comic signed or find the back issue. I didn't even think comic art was sold. I didn't think artists would want to sell it. If you met an artist, you would have them sign the comic. Like one that I don't have it here. I think I have that one in California, but there was a independent comic by Now called Eben the Raven, EB apostrophe NN, and Chris Ecker was the first comic artist I met, who I've become friends with over the years online. And then this is another comic that Chris did.
Can you raise it? Yeah.
Yeah, Ram. Now, this is actually a pretty hot back issue, which is kind of ridiculous because, and he signed it.
See, I have no idea.
Okay. Now, why is this such a hot back issue? Well, I would like it because of
Teenage
Ram.
Mutant Ninja Turtles?
No, it's the first appearance of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is actually credited as the first appearance of Youngblood, I guess. Because that ad on in this comic from, this is from Elgin, Illinois. This is like Megaton Comics, May 1987. So Chris Ecker was the first comic artist that I met. Like for me, like it was meaning like for all of us, it's like meeting like a rock star, like to meet a comic artist or a writer for a comic. Wow. So that was a big, getting a sketch from them. So that was my introduction to comic art, was I think getting sketches.
There's people that came in late. I just want them to be aware. Will you let them know that you're safe and that you're somewhere that you want to be at this moment?
That's right. Witness protection program. Yeah. Like we started at the beginning. I'm in my parents' basement in the Chicago area. I'm visiting them, and I picked a pretty sparse corner here with a crawl space.
There are.
I know some people have like their comic stuff in the background, but what I have, like I was showing, is like I have like my comic collection is here in my parents' basement. So there's random stuff that are here.
Okay.
Some better than others. Here's another one.
So what? Highland Park didn't have a comic book shop?
No, maybe in Highwood there was briefly one in there. Moondogs was in Deerbrook Mall, which is in
Deerbrook Mall. Yeah, Northbrook Mall wasn't that far from you either.
Northbrook Court.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We used to go there a lot.
Northbrook Court was huge in the 80s. You go in there now, and it's doesn't have much time left. It's still pretty clean, but it's a lot different place.
No, that was a big mall for us.
Huge hangout. They never had a comic store, but if it was like, the drugstore for comics, but definitely when Moondogs was like the big one that opened here. Moondogs.
Northbrook in the early 90s had the gigantic Borders right down the street from it. I used to go there once a week. I mean, it was like
right near Deerbrook Mall. Yeah.
Oh man, that was the best.
But yeah, I mean, growing up here was great. And then I went to college at Wisconsin, and then
you went Madison, right?
University of Wisconsin. I graduated in 91, and it was that was in near the end of my real comic book collecting was in the 90s, probably like 94. I wasn't buying as many comics. Just as we change, a lot of it, I didn't like the Spider Clone story. I remember I was just like, no.
Well, you were mostly a Marvel guy, from what I remember. DC exists, and that's all nice and fine, right?
Well, some of this crazy stuff I'm showing you, like, look, I was so in. Well, here's another one. So Badger was actually.
You just like skipped over DC and just went to the truly weird and wacky. Not people that were trying.
Badger had a long run and took place in Madison, Wisconsin, and Mike Barron was the writer for this series. And when I was a senior in college, Mike, if you're watching, I want to apologize now. We called you and made phonies on you. Okay. Remember when people used to make phonies? There's no caller ID. Like Mike Barron was in the phone book, and we were pretty silly, and we called him pretty late at night, and he answered. And we talked about the Punisher, and we're like, yeah, he didn't know who it was. Now I've revealed myself. Sorry, Mike.
Bootlegging. Damn, that shop in Decatur is awesome. If you're ever near Atlanta, make sure
Capital City Comics was in Madison, so Nexus and Steve Root, they were all producing. I think Bill Sienkiewicz lived in Madison for a little bit as well.
I didn't know that. Are you sure about that?
Maybe, but maybe not.
Yeah,
but I mean, there was a bit of a comics, publishing scene.
Bill isn't up there with Abraham Lincoln, like he slept here one night kind of level. I don't know. Bill was in. Maybe there were good drugs up there. Who knows? Right? Madison had some. Good stuff.
Wisconsin was great. I had a great time there. And then after college, I moved out. I got stuck in traffic in LA, and then
Yeah. When did you go to LA? Sorry, I missed that. When? Why? You went to LA for a career?
Yeah. I was hoping. So anyways, I graduated college. I stayed the summer here I was a golf caddy for 10 summers growing up.
Yeah, let's get the blossom though.
So my first job, when I moved to LA in 1992.
Okay.
And my first job was at a company called Whit Thomas Harris, and they produced Empty Nest, The Golden Girls, and they also had Blossom. And that was my first credit in TV was as a production assistant working on Blossom. And the director of all the episodes was Bill Bixby.
You're kidding.
I'm
Bixby?
not kidding.
I knew that he directed. I didn't know he wrote.
No. He was the in-house director for all the episodes.
Got it.
Yeah. So I mean,
did you meet Susan Harris? She's actually kind of a hero of mine. Susan Harris is an amazing writer. Golden Girls. Yeah.
She did Soap also. Yeah. No. Her writing like got that company started. I mean, she's all those shows. She's Empty Nest, Golden Girls, and Soap, which was before I was my time, but Soap was like major for Susan Harris.
Not that far ahead of your time. I know you watched.
It was already American Hero. Yeah, they weren't producing it when I was there, but
right.
Anyways, Bill Bixby was he's the Hulk for us. He's the Courtship of Eddie's father for others, but great guy. I mean, what a nice guy. I mean, I was the lowest position on that show. I mean, you're not any lower than a production assistant. It's a starting entry-level job. And he was friendly to me. My dad came to visit, and Bill was like, showed him around, gave him this whole tour. I mean, a lot of directors and high-level people like wouldn't really take the time to show around the production assistant's dad. So that was like, I guess my first celebrity meeting was Bill. He was just there. The magician, Peter Wright, correct. Bill's had a huge career. Very long career.
Bixby died right around the time that you got there, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, Bill had cancer that was not going to go away, and so he kept working. He never complained, but he was not going to get any better. I think working extended his life. And actually, I spent a lot of time with him on the last episode of the season I worked on. We shot at Disneyland, and the whole cast and crew stayed at Disneyland in Anaheim. But I had to drive Bill back. They rented me a town car, and I drove Bill back and forth every morning. I'd pick him up, and I'd take him to UCLA to a tanning salon because he didn't want people to worry about it being unhealthy. I mean, it was sad. And then I would drive him down to Anaheim, and for a whole week, I spent a lot of time with him alone in the car, and it was really good. And it was sad because other people would come by the set to pretty much say goodbye to him. And one day, this is a good one, was I'm up in the production office and I hear Mr. Rogers is on the set. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what? I go, what? I got to go see. So I go down to the stage. I open the giant big doors and it's dark and I don't really see anything. And I go around the corner and I see Bill and Mr. Rogers sitting on the Blossom family couch set. And they see me and Bill's like, Steve, could I help you with something? And I'm like, I heard Mr. Rogers was here.
He got that a lot.
I wanted to meet him. And Bill's like, and they walk over to me, and Mr. Rogers is a tall guy. He's like, I'm 6'2", and he was about the same. And he looks you in the eye, and he's got that calming voice. And I was like, I've met other celebrities and comic book artists and creators over the year, but meeting Mr. Rogers, that was really cool. And Bill was like, I interrupted them, but he didn't mind, and it was really great to meet them. So
that's awesome. That's all. And then again, you stopped me here. I think you did a spec script. If I remember right, that's kind of, I don't know, I won't call it your breakthrough, but you got an agent out of that, I think, right?
That's right. So, I was working on half-hour shows, and I was trying to get into writing. So you either would select writing a half-hour sitcom, or you would write a 1-hour show. So when the X-Files came on, I was like blown away. I go, this show was made for me. I love the X-Files. So at the time, you would write an existing show as your writing sample. So I wrote an X-Files, and got me my first agent. X-Files spec. Like X-Files is never going to read my script, but other shows are familiar with the X-Files. So that's how I got my first agent. And then I made my first script sale to a show called Sliders. Sliders on Fox. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And basically I went in to pitch ideas for Sliders, and one of them was basically like, they're like, they go to a planet where like everyone's turned into a zombie, and they're like, oh, is this Dawn of the Dead? I go, no, this is like I Am Legend. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, well, forget it. But like, like it's this world of zombies, like a weight loss drug, kind of like Ozempic, but back then it was Fen-Phen, has turned the world into a zombies. So that was the premise that they bought, and I wrote the script, and that was my first produced credit. So my first credit is on Blossom as a production assistant, but getting your first like writing credit, and a pretty big deal. And then Sliders was on Fox, and
Now, you didn't get paid much, I imagine, for writing. You just got more writing gigs. Was that basically how it worked back then? Or was pay actually okay?
Funny you should ask. Yeah, no, the pay. I mean, it's look, it's a union set rate,
Got
and I think you're like my mom. So I remember calling my parents,
Yeah.
in Highland Park, telling them that I'd sold. I mean, because I've been like working as a production assistant.
What does that mean, Steve? That's the first question. What does that mean? I can see my son's name on the screen for maybe 1 second.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about it. So I call my parents, and I've been getting by, but you make $300 a week as a production assistant, and it's enough to get by in LA at the time, and still be able to buy a couple comics, but no comic art. So I called my parents, told them I sold this thing to Sliders. My mom yanks the phone away from my dad. How much are they paying you? And the rate was, it was at the time was $27,000 for a script. It was more money than I'd ever. Yeah, and it was, and also there's residuals and stuff. There's also taxes, and you have to pay dues. So I remember my mom saying like, "Okay, it's amazing. Don't tell anyone you're making that much money. They're going to ask you for money, and get more of those. You need to do more scripts.
Get more of those.
Yeah, get more of those. And then I remember my mom watching the episode, and
it's like fishing.
I have like a whole series of like voicemails from my mom after she's watched my shows, and I think Sliders was like, "I don't understand what was going on. I was glad they spelled our last name right, and don't tell anyone how much you got paid, or they're going to ask you for money."
Those are three of like 40,000 solid tenants from a mother.
I mean,
your mom sounds like my mom.
I don't know what comic book scripts were paying for in 1996, but I think a lot of comic writers were, people were trying to break into live action television because the rates are a lot higher. There's residuals. I still get paid for Sliders every
oh yeah.
Maybe. I think I got a check. There is a show I got a check for 1 cent. It was the Viper, which was on the UPN, and I worked on that show with Howard Chaykin, which is another story. And I took a picture of the check and I sent it to Howard, and he's like, my check was 5 cents or something like that. So he got something.
Oh, Howard's always one-upping like that. Yeah,
always one-upping. But I met Howard Chaykin. I mean, I obviously knew all about him through the years, and when I was working on another show, I went into interview on this show called The Sentinel, which was on UPN, and the same. And Howard was working on The Flash. Back when I was watching the Flash wasn't on anymore, but he was still working for that company on Viper. So when I was there for the Sentinel, I said, does Howard Chaykin work here? They're like, yeah. How do you know him? And they're like, I read his comics. They're like, oh, you're one of them. Come on. And then
you're one of them.
You're one of them. Like, ooh, is this good or bad? And they introduced me to Howard, and we hit it off. This was in 1997.
Oh wow.
And we've been very good friends ever since. I see him. We see him in LA. He lives in Ventura now, and I saw him for lunch not that long ago. And
yeah,
it's great. I mean, we have a great time together. He's very
Howard. Howard, of course, is a man who likes to talk to a man who likes to talk. That's his line. So I'm sure you guys get along.
We get along. It's great. And look, I remember one time I saw him, and I went back home, and I was like, how old is Howard? And I looked it up, and I was like, oh, today was his birthday. I emailed him like, Howard, it was your birthday. I could have come a different day. And he said, and he responded, that was planned. And I was like, that was like touching. I was like, that was like nice that he decided, you want to meet me on his birthday? I'm like, okay.
What, did he know you were buying?
Bye. No, probably was him because I went up to see him. Great guy. But I mean, obviously Howard's completely uncensored, which is good and bad.
I know, he's wonderful. Yeah.
He's wonderful. But he's he knows everyone in the business. He's been around forever. So, and he had a very high opinion of Russ, which is when I met Howard. They're at the same show, and he was telling me about Russ. He's like, it's like, and he was very complimentary about Russ's work. He's like, he's one of the gods of comics. That was his quote. Russ Heath is one of the gods of comics. And Howard wasn't like joking around or anything like that. That's what he really. I mean, he is one of the gods of comics. And
that's nice. That's good. Howard does not mince words with.
Does not mince words.
And so he's encyclopedic with illustration art history as well.
Someone here, number one Marvel fan, Steven and Mandel were competitors for art. Okay, let's get one thing straight. Mandel is a real TV writing talent. I'm a hack. Okay, Mandel's like the real deal.
You trying to get a job from Dave?
No, I never talked to him about that kind of stuff. We talk about, you know, maybe some of the props that he bought and some comics. Very nice guy, but don't talk about TV writers.
We got to speed up. We got to speed up your career here. Let's go right to Femme Fatales, because that's something that you created, that you pitched, that you at least if not actually show ran, right?
Yeah, co-show ran that.
Cinemax.
So I worked on it.
Yeah.
It was for HBO Cinemax. They were trying to clean up the channel a little bit, and then we did an anthology.
It sounds like a Cinemax show. I thought maybe you designed it purposely for.
They wanted. It was a half-hour show, so we worked with Bob. You know, Bob Layton worked on it. We did a whole.
Oh, Bob told me all about it back when it was going on. Yeah,
I know. So we brought Bob in to do an episode. So
well, did he end up putting his name on that episode?
I think so.
Okay.
And he did the comic art. Yeah, I mean, that one was like the WGA, so like the credits. Sometimes we would use like funny names, just like pen names, just to be silly.
Yeah, I had a vague memory of him writing a script and it getting changed and him removing his name from it. I remember.
He maybe got upset. I go, Bob. I go, in TV. I go, when I wrote my Slider script, everything was changed, but they kept my name on it. It's just it's like when we go into production, for whatever reason, things change. It's just like TV it's always changing and stuff like that. That's actually good. Where 97% of my collection is Russ's art. So if Russ knew how much art I owned by him, he probably wouldn't have been friends with me. But Howard I like to keep it sort of minimal on what I own. I mean, as much as I love like his American, I don't own anything by it. A lot of stuff that I'm really nostalgic for, I don't own pieces by it. I'm not, it's maybe just too expensive, or it's just I love reading it, but I'm not interested in owning a piece of art. Yes, that's probably true. I mean, but think about, I've showed Russ a few pieces that I own, and it is amazing how like the recollection. He's like kind of goes back to the day at the drawing board, describing like what he was doing. It's unbelievable. So it's sort of like he just goes back to that day when he like did that story, and he tells all a lot of the scripts were kind of like not really scripts, and a lot of those artists had to do everything, so.
Hey, one more, Steve, one more. Mark Altman collab again. I think Pandora, right? You guys did that one together.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote a lot. I thought you wrote a lot of those episodes.
Yeah. So it was a show that Mark sold to the CW. Mark created it, but I was also the co-showrunner. We shot it in Sofia, Bulgaria in 2019 and 2020.
Oh, how did you?
We have a photo from the set, which is on the.
I went to Sofia last May for my friend lives there, and really? I loved it. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I like. I visited a lot of the Central and Eastern European countries that are not really visited by Americans. I find them delightful. I mean, people are very friendly, and they're not. I like kind of going to places that are sort of not the number one tourist destination.
Yeah,
and I got to say, like, I was the only American there, but like the crew, hardworking, dedicated people, and it was a great experience. I mean, it was kind of wild to move there for 3 months. I lived there 3 months, so.
3 months. Did you get to travel around Bulgaria then, outside of Sofia, because it's a beautiful country?
Mm-hmm. I went over to Italy. I went to Poland that trip, and then went out to the Black Sea. I went back in 2020, but it was during the pandemic, so I actually wasn't allowed to leave the country. We were just trying to get the work done. That was in 2020.
Yeah.
Mark Altman is a close friend, and we've collaborated on a lot of stuff. And he's known. I mean, him and another friend of ours, David Goodman, are probably like the top Star Trek experts like in the world. Like these guys are so. I mean, they know everything. And Mark's movie, Free Enterprise, is just great, classic.
The one thing I noticed, I brought up Pandora, is that you did an episode that Christian Gossett directed. It's a small world, Christian Gossett.
I think that one of the photo that I sent you, that's in the.
I didn't look at any of those things.
Anyway, so I mean, I've known Chris since like the 90s, I guess, and then I knew he was doing Red Star, but we were just friends from living in LA and just being fans of comics and all that stuff. And so so when we did the show, we were hiring people for director and Chris, and so it was funny. The Comic-Con that I missed in 2019, which was the only one I missed since the one I met Jack Kirby, I was in Bulgaria, but the episode was being directed by Chris Gossett, and Aaron Gray was in it. So I kind of felt like Comic-Con was.
I got Aaron Gray's autograph at Chicago Wizard for a friend a few like 10 years ago.
So she's in the episode and was, being a super geek. Like, it's just like the best to like.
She's a sweetheart too. Oh my God. Marcus has a very important question for you. He figures you might be an expert on this.
Homeboys from Outer Space was on UPN. Was it one of the flagship shows?
Define flagship.
Yeah, define flagship. I'm saying when the UPN launched, I would say that's a flagship show. But
that's flagship for UPN. Big. The
UPN, their programming was really bizarre. But like they did do the Sentinel, which I worked on, which I think that was a flagship show. It was on for 5 seasons.
I'm gonna just keep this zippy, cut you off all this stuff. Let's talk real quick about influences. You seem like an 80s TV zombie. You're like Mike TV out of Willy Wonka, right?
Oh yeah, like I was saying, like we growing up here in Chicago, like every week we'd go see a movie, good or bad.
Movie.
So many things. Yeah, like go see a movie in the theater. I saw Spinal Tap
back then. Yeah,
I saw Spinal Tap in the theater with my parents. Like I remember seeing The Road Warrior in the theater. Like so many things I saw like in the theater every week.
Did you watch? Did you watch any wrestling at the theater?
No, but I mean, we definitely watched. My brothers and I definitely watched the wrestling stuff.
Okay. I was wondering.
Did they show in the theater? I don't know. No, but we
definitely watched. Lucky few. I was wondering how lucky you were.
All the Jimmy Snuka and all that. We watched all that.
Oh man, well, Chicago's got the tradition. Now you got Billy Corgan with his promotion, and you got Madame Zuzu's right there in Highland Park. Do you go see Billy Corgan every couple of weeks at a tea house?
They do a live music thing there, but I go to Once Upon a Bagel, which is like right next to it. So, Madame Zuzu's was in Ravinia, but now it's in downtown Highland Park.
Oh no, I know. I was just there. I think I was just there in December. Don't eat there. Don't eat there. Okay, just don't eat there. Yeah. Like sprouts will grow in your stomach and come out between your toes after eating there. But the very nice drinks. So then, comic wise, let's do the prerequisite. We got to talk about comics. Seriously, what did you read? What left an impression on you? What did you like? Artists, books, characters, time periods, anything that comes to mind.
Well, I mean, obviously the DC Horror and War, like when I was in camp, all that. I love you buy like a $1 comic and there'd be like a bunch of stories in there. Anthology stories, some of them are 8 pages, 10 pages. But, obviously the art that stood out for me the most was by Russ or Joe Kubert.
Really?
Very, very different styles, but I was like, was into all their stuff. So that definitely, obviously,
wow. So you'd like Heath for 40 plus years.
I was like, wow, they're very different styles, but they always stood out,
Oh yeah.
But then, I bet all the main, Dark Knight, in the 80s was just so much great stuff. It's why we are collecting all the stuff now. It was like, I think my first X-Men comic was 143 with Kitty and the Alien story. And then I read everything before it and then kept on reading it afterwards. Like I definitely remember Uncanny X-Men 143 when she's alone in the mansion against the alien. Arkham Asylum, I remember going to a signing when both those guys were there. Our friend's dad drove us, and I remember waiting till midnight to read Arkham Asylum because I was like, let's make it the most spooky experience ever. So, but as much as I love it, some of that stuff, I'm like not looking for something from some of these issues. But like I loved a lot of the stuff that everyone liked. But I think I was reading, Spider-Man I've been reading forever. The main run of Spider-Man, And then obviously they started spinning off into so many titles. Obviously The Punisher was a big deal. The miniseries, Making Phonies to Mike Barron, Mike Barron was like writing a lot of stuff. It was good. Chuck Dixon, I always liked his writing. So I guess it was a combination of like obviously the writing and then the art. So I think people forget about the writing a lot. I'm a writer, so it's like forget about some of the stories. Like Craven's Last Hunt is like beautiful. I mean, as tragic as it is and awesome as the art, it's a great story.
Yeah.
Even though you had to buy, it's such a weird crossover. You had to get two. You had to get, it was 6 issues, and it was like Web of Spider-Man. But it was so good, you like really had to look those down. Whereas it got to like Secret Wars 2, you don't need to buy all those other things,
Well, Peter Rowe is Bill has designated him exclusively a war art collector. You probably know Peter's collection.
Yeah.
And he's testing you here.
Heard.
He's testing you. He needs three or four deep.
Oh, that's yeah. Who's my third? You know, I guess it's John Severin.
Good choice.
And and also it's like, I mean, you look at his EC stuff. You go further back than like the stuff if he was doing stuff in the 70s and 80s, like EC stuff is like, wow, John Severin. And also, DC war and horror. Like I always I always liked that reading that kind of stuff. I mean, I was reading a lot of the mainstream stuff, but I also enjoyed reading, some of the off stuff. I felt it was a good value to spend $1.
Matt, Sean went to town here. Sean is backing it up with data here. Look at this. I mean, those are things that even the
one other funny story about Russ is they did a DC War artist edition, and they did Russ, Joe Kubert, John Severin, Toth, and Kirby are the 5 that are featured in this. And I go over to Russ's house, and there's a huge box in front of his door, like literally in front of his door. He couldn't open his door. I'm like, Russ, what is this? He's like, oh, it's been here for days. It's too heavy. I can't lift it. And I'm like, what? And so I bring it inside, and IDW had sent him like a bunch of comps, and Russ couldn't lift it. So it sat outside for a week or something. We opened it up, and it was just great. We went through the book. I sat with Russ for an hour, and we went over the whole book. And, Russ had never seen a lot of other artists in black and white like that. He'd maybe seen the published comics, but he didn't see like Joe Kubert's like black and white art. And Russ was wasn't fully, he liked some of Joe's art, but when he saw the black and white through the book, it's like Russ was like super complimentary. And Russ was, even complimentary on himself, because he was pretty hard on himself. But like seeing those editions and going through the black and white, and then Russ was close friends with John Severin. We get to the John Severin stuff, and Russ is like, just the stories. Like going through the book, I'm like, this is amazing. I wish we could have recorded it.
Yeah, we'll have a chance to talk to Russ here, and the natives are obviously getting a little rest.
But the other thing is that we get to the Kirby section of the book, and Russ goes, "Oi, Kirby." Russ is like, his art is so unrealistic of like what Russ's style. It was pretty funny. So we get to the Kirby thing, and he was just like rolling his eyes. And when he gets to Toth, Russ is like, this guy was working on another level than like every other artist. When he sees the Toth stuff in black and white, like, a lot of these artists, like, were not happy with their coloring jobs. And to see these artist editions was a real,
it was a vastly different world. And then we managed to screw up coloring again.
What is Davich wondering about? I own this.
Well, Jason D'Ambrosio wants to know if you own X-Men art, and don't answer the question. It's just, it's his way of saying, can we see some damn art? Can we see some damn art?
I own some X-Men stuff.
Let's bring up a piece. How
many we have viewing right now?
I have no idea. It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter. Someone, if you want to tell us, 280 or 600 people.
How many dislikes?
I see up here. It's a little over 50. A little over 50 people. But they're important people that are going to influence your career.
Thank you all for coming.
There you go.
Here, Bootlegs said, I have a copy of Zmen. It's funny. You say that, it's like it says pronounced Zmen on the thing.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Actually, a piece of art from this issue was just recently on, I think, Heritage or something like that. Oh.
Sean Lackey knows everything.
Chicago native.
There he is. He was in Lake Forest.
Yep. Remember he cut down the trees and everyone was pissed off?
He was 8 blocks from my parents' place when he did it.
This cover could rival the Chuck Norris one. Maybe the original.
I mean, I think it might have been based on it. So that doesn't count. But I mean, that's a good place to start.
Whoa.
Got to come in between us here.
All right, Andrew Allen, you were wondering about this. Let's just let this sink in for a moment. Okay, is everyone okay? Whoa, look at that. Now, was I a reader of this comic? No. Did I watch this animated show? No, but I remember it. Do I know the artists? Absolutely. So this is back in 2006, I think. It was on eBay. Chuck Costas was selling it. Opening bid $399. I was the only bidder.
$399 what?
Dollars.
U.S. dollar.
Yep. And I
Okay.
remember having buyer's remorse. I was like, damn, I was the only one that bid on it. I'm like, okay. But when, look, when I posted this to CAF, it sort of created my personality on CAF. This got a lot of comments from people just saying hilarious things. And, it put me in touch with Mike Zeck. I talked to John Beatty. I talked to Mike Zeck about, has anyone ever asked you to recreate this cover? Because I think he only recreates certain covers a certain amount of time. I don't think he's done this one. And, going back to Comic-Con, it was years ago, and that's involved, someone introduced me to Dave Mandel. This must have been 2006 or 2007. And they're like, Dave, this is Steve Crozier. And Dave's like, oh, the Chuck Norris guy. And I was like, and my friend turns to me and he says, you've made it. You've arrived.
You have arrived.
This is sort of, and Chuck told me that this was actually drawn during like the peak Zeck and Beatty period, which I guess he did Captain America Annual 8. These guys were teamed up, like, I guess three of their like big covers, and this one were all drawn around the same time. And, if you're familiar with the comics, Steve Ditko did the pencils, and it was inked by Art Nichols. And I decided, obviously in January 2013, or maybe in December 2012, it was kind of a bad secret that everyone knew Ditko's home address. So I decided I'm not going to ask Ditko for original art. I'm not going to ask Ditko about Spider-Man. I'm not going to ask Ditko about Doctor Strange. I'm going to ask Ditko about Chuck Norris. And he wrote me back. And this is the letter I got from Steve Ditko. I'm not going to read it.
That is long too. I mean, a lot of them are 3 or 4 lines at best. Yeah, but it's the end that I love here. I've seen some Chuck Norris movies. Writers, artists in comics have to be familiar with what is going on, and degrees of interest will vary.
Yes. If I was going to do a follow-up, I would ask, what Chuck Norris movies did you see? And he probably would have remembered. Like, he remembered obviously a lot more than I would have thought. But good on him. Like, look, he wrote everyone back. You put a self-addressed stamped envelope, and like Ditko wrote back. So obviously this is probably the only letter he got about Chuck Norris, but he took time. He wrote a long letter back about Chuck, about working on this comic. I think I asked, how did you get involved with this comic, writing for Chuck Norris? And it was 87 when this comic came out, and probably, I think the editors were still like handing out jobs to Ditko and obviously to Zeck and Beatty. And it was just a job. It was a Chuck Norris animated show, and Marvel licensed the comic for a 4-issue series. So that's that one. Look, a lot of people are going to tune out right now because that's all they tuned in for was the Chuck Norris cover. So.
Oh no, there's more Chuck Norris. There's more Chuck Norris, and there's some breaking news. I know there's some breaking news to talk about as well. I know there's a press release here. The Eisner-nominated publishers announced new limited edition reprint of Chuck Norris and the Karate Commandos. Mm-hmm. This just came out today. I wasn't aware of it. Steve sent it along, so don't blame me. But apparently, following critical acclaim, Eisner nomination for the reprints of David Wright's Carol Day strips, the Book Palace is proud to unveil their latest project, the reprinting of this 4-issue limited comic book series. Who would have known? The special edition will be edited by Roger Clark, Christopher Kalaki, and Kasra Ghanbari. Wow, I didn't. Okay, featuring a forward by the legendary Bruce Campbell. I'm sure you arranged that. You got to be part of the team there in the background. What's great here is a limited run of 500. There's a ridiculously large, self-described ridiculously large and heavy custom metal book stand, making it a collector's item, no doubt, for comic book enthusiasts. And the inclusion of the forward by Kendall, renowned actor and cult favorite. You got to be careful using the word cult these days, but a cult favorite adds a special touch. Here's the quote from Guy Mills. "We're thrilled to embark on this new project, especially after the success and recognition we received for the Carol Day reprints," said Guy Mills. Or is it Guy? Let's call him Guy Mills, representative of the Book Palace, working with Roger Clark, Chris Kalaki, and to a lesser extent, Kasra Ghanbari. We are confident that this reprint will exceed expectations. All right. Hey, congratulations. That Chuck Norris cover's got to be at least $450 at today's value. after something like that.
I mean, I'm so glad they're reprinting this because, like, I was worried about that $399 investment back in 2006. That press release, not real.
It's not real. The Heritage has the estimator. You can send in a piece and get an estimate on its value. Have you considered sending the Chuck Norris in, especially in a post 98 world valuation, and seeing what it come back at?
No, but I talked to Jim at Comic-Con, this past Comic-Con, and I said, when I'm gone or when I'm not mentally able to recognize my comic art anymore, I want everything going to Heritage, but I need the cover of the catalog to be the Chuck Norris cover.
It's not a big ask.
He said, let's see. Like I said, we'll talk about it.
If you get and you've got you've got over 1,000 pieces, right, in your comic art collection, right? And then if that's what they got to do, it's not asking a lot.
That's not asking a lot. So, we'll see. Also, one other thing about Heritage and Russ Heath is Russ is the first artist to consign his collection to Heritage. If you actually look back in 2002, 2003, everything went to Heritage. It's still up there. Russ told me that Kevin Eastman was going to buy everything. He came to Russ's apartment for 2 full days and looked at everything that Russ still had. And I guess Russ had said that some animation deal for Tin Turtles didn't come through, and Kevin couldn't buy the collection. And then
I remember you gave there was a dollar amount. It was just
I think it was like 450,000.
Yeah.
This is back in 2002, maybe 2001. And then Heritage, if you look at the dawn of their comic art archives, Russ Heath, it's all on there, like complete stories. I mean, obviously sold very early on, and a lot was put out at the same time, but he made a pretty good chunk of change. And Jim credits Russ as being the first comic artist to consign their collection with Heritage. It's happening all the time now.
So we're gonna move on to art now, but before we do, we have a special guest. This guy who actually is in Chicago.
I am in Chicago.
Where are you now? Where are you? What part of Chicago?
Irving Park. So the best way I can describe Irving Park is if you have the city proper, and then you have O'Hare, and I'm right in the middle, like on the blue line. It's almost directly right in between.
If I'm taking 94 into the city, I see the exit ramp for Irving Park.
Yeah,
you get to it right away. It's right when you enter the city.
Good to see you, my friend. Look, I want to thank. I mean, we're gonna joke around here a lot, but CAF is one of the few websites, like OnlyFans, that has really changed my life. I'm serious. All the people that we've met and stuff like that. There is no what other website is changed your life in a great positive way. Meeting all these people. So just getting a little sentimental, but
that's not. It's nice. Well, I don't know how nice. There's a reason I'm on, so we'll wait to see how nice that's going to be here real soon.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, before we go, we're gonna go through a whole bunch of art here. We wanted to do a top 10 comments left by Steve Crow in Steve Davich's Comic Art Fans Gallery. And Steve, go ahead. You can read it off like a late night style for us. Number 10.
So, I'll hold off. I'll do a quick introduction to it. There's nothing. You buy this piece of art and you're really excited to share it, and you post it on CAF. And no matter what, no matter what anybody says, whether they like comment, everybody likes comments. The more comments or whatever else. And I'll tell you what, Steve is right there to be the first to comment and say the shittiest things about the art as soon as he can. And these are out of hundreds of comments, the top 10 I found. So, buddy,
some of my comments, I'm not going to say who it was, but they were so upset by one of my comments that they defriended me on Facebook. And we did have to explain that the comment was a joke, and they added me back on Facebook. But they were look, it gets taken out of context, but that was just one thing. So just take that as you absorb these comments. It's amazing you put in the time, but let's see what you got. Okay.
So number 10 goes. This is just the top 10. Number 10. If you're ever open to trading this piece, please let me know. I have Bruce Zeck art.
Is this one that you've copied and pasted and used more than once, Steve? Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay. Number 9.
Finally, something good. 3 exclamation points. For,
Now,
why does ice cream even exist when gelato is an option?
that was cut and paste from somewhere. I don't know where.
Let's let it go. Let it go. Number 7. One of the better pages to come out of the cross-gen comics line. I own no cross-gen comics art. Who knows?
I don't think anyone does. I don't think anyone does. It's like completely. Maybe there's some Perez stuff, but yeah, that one I just came up with on my own. I didn't cut and paste.
Number 6. You should start responding to comments in order to artificially inflate your CAF comment count.
Yes, this is something I want to bring up. Everyone who's like gets up there, we have to change. It has to be changed. When someone replies to a comment, it counts as a comment, and it's a little ridiculous because like half of the comments are replies. I don't like it.
Yeah, what do you think? You think it should be a -1, a 0.25?
It could be -1. Well, that'd be great. -1 comment for every time you.
Yeah, because they'll be comment.
Maybe. I mean, Steve and I evaluate our like. We don't get enough comments on something we post. We consider selling it or trading it. Like if it doesn't get the comments or the likes.
Oh, the three of us are we're gonna have a debate on the value of a comment in 2024. We'll definitely. Can we move on here? Steve?
Yeah. Yes, go on.
One of my favorites right now. There are 4,450 pieces of Zagor art on CAF, and they're all more interesting than this.
Yeah, I came up with that one on my own, and I mean, that is true about how the Zagor pieces. That is true. So yeah, that's an original comment.
Yep. Here we go. Number 4. You might want to return this. It only got 1 comment. Well, none really.
Ooh.
Nothing makes you feel more warm inside than getting that one.
Wow, Steve, thanks for putting in the work on this. I mean, it's bringing back a lot of memories. Keep going.
I bet you forgot a lot of. Number 3, first appearance of something good in your CAF in 2023.
Oh, I'm going to remember that one.
Yeah, I went home and cried in my pillow after that one. Number 2, I have never wanted a page from this issue.
I might have used that a lot on your stuff.
And number 1.
Oh wow.
This guy has canceled multiple purchases with me, including one very recently, each time due to financial emergencies, which would make this heritage acquisition from yesterday a bit hard to explain. Those who don't appreciate having their time wasted, beware. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice comment.
Seems like a cut and paste.
Were these the top 10 comments or just the last 10 that he left?
It could be either one, but all very good. So I'll post something and then I'll see like in a matter of seconds after I post it, Steve popping up, and I'm like, oh God, what is this going to be?
I know. I was wondering, like, when you guys get like an alert that I've commented on your art, Kasra and Steve, do you get like, oh no? Now, you do, Steve, but it's Kasra.
No, I do. How much time do you think he has this time to go back and forth? That comes to my head. We've had a couple.
Too much. I know. Yeah. We have an exchange on there. You know.
But and then back.
I mean, thank you for doing the time. Wow. I don't know where I think Marcus is trying to figure out where I cut and paste that. Was that I don't know where that one was from. That number 1 comment.
It was probably from years ago, but back. Both of these guys, Kasra and Steve, 2 of my best friends in collecting, and just happy
in collecting.
Well, just whatever. Just
he's a collecting. I'm a real life friend. He's a collecting friend.
And by the way,
I was in your wedding party wearing the wrong suit color.
And by the way, Steve, you called me Sunday, and I was afraid I was going to let this slip that I was coming on, so I wouldn't pick up the phone. By the way,
This is a great surprise, and I was nervous, and then now I feel okay.
Okay, good.
And Kasra, I did not think you would show the press release, but you did, and that press release was not real. It was just obviously.
I just want to see if we get in trouble, honestly, and Steve, stay on for some art. Stay on for a little bit, right?
All right.
Come,
It's not bedtime yet.
well, we're past an hour on this. We got to get to art now. No more fun and games. Look at this pretty thing here. Wow.
Okay, so we could clown about Steve Ditko doing the interiors for Chuck Norris and the Karate Commandos #1, but this is what is this? Tales of Suspense 42. I think he did this like a couple months before he did Doctor Strange. Like this is just, I mean, Steve Ditko is one of the masters, and this page is a great example of that. So I can make fun of writing a letter to Steve Ditko and not asking about Doctor Strange, but this is like, I love this page. It has, it's a getting Doctor Strange without paying for Doctor Strange.
Oh, 100%. It's the best non-Doctor Strange page I've ever seen.
Yeah.
With a little bit of horror mixed into it, but it's
yeah. So I just wanted, I mean, it's not, there'll be some fun stuff that we show, but this is just like a real example of a kick-ass example of Ditko working for Marvel, and I love his Charlton stuff too. It's just like, they just let him go do his thing. I love a lot of his Charlton art and covers. Okay, so yeah, this is Rusty. This is Showcase 27, first appearance of Sea Devils, if that matters. And this is something we found, I found at Russ's house, took a picture of it. Russ was actually, it says here, he was the president of the Newark Skin Divers Incorporated. Like he was actually a scuba diver.
Is that what that is? Yeah.
Yeah, that's his membership card. It's a little like card. And yeah, so it's kind of cool that he would tell me about working on Sea Devils, and he thought all the fantastical elements were kind of ridiculous because that's not what he experienced underwater, but that made the stories more interesting, the creatures and stuff like that. But this was a guy that spent time underwater, and drew what he knew and like what tried to give it the full textures. Like if you look in like that middle panel, like the streak across, and he really took the time to make this underwater like what he experienced when he was underwater. So all his stuff, the 3 showcase issues and what he was doing on Sea Devils, it's beautiful. It's great. Oh, and so we also found with that's his original mask, which if you look at the issues of Showcase and Sea Devils that he drew, he would use that as photo reference for the Sea Devils. And I told him to put it on his drawing table. Oh, we're blasting through stuff now. This is Russ at the Playboy Mansion for Give and Take, which he did for Blazing Combat. He photographed himself. But that helmet actually is Russ's helmet that was issued to him when he was in the Air Corps. It was before with the Air Force. Russ was in the Army Air Corps, and that's his actual helmet. The other stuff is fatigues that he bought in Chicago. So he had the Playboy photographer photograph him as in these different poses. And if you look at the Give and Take story in Blazing Combat, all the soldiers look like Russ, but they are so beautifully drawn. Blazing Combat is awesome. Like all the artists, they knew it was being printed in black and white. They're all trying to outdo each other. But this story that Russ did, Give and Take, is like all the other artists are like, Russ just blew everyone else away. It's beautiful. It's great. And here is Russ, wearing his helmet. He still had the helmet and he still had the Sea Devils mask and his ID card. So I took this picture of Russ. He passed away in 2019, so maybe this was 2017, something like that, at his apartment. But Russ is a very good-natured guy. Like I don't think I would get Joe Kubert to put on like a Sea Devils mask. I don't think it would work. But like Russ was like, I'm like, Russ, put it on. He's like, hurry up, I can't breathe. So I took the photo. So Russ was it was a fun guy. He was like he was a grown-up kid. He didn't have a car, so we'd go out to lunch all the time, and we were getting out. We're doing stuff. He was a great wingman. I mean, he had a picture of himself when he was like 17 in the Army Air Corps. He'd show the waitresses like, you see what you missed? He was funny. Great guy. So yeah, I could go. There's just stories on stories with Russ, but he's a great guy. He was my favorite artist, and he used to introduce me. We're out. He would say, hey, "This is Steve, my best friend." Like that's how he introduced me. I don't think he knew what else would have called me, but that was touching. Like Russ Heath would introduce me as his best friend.
How did you meet Russ there? How did that happen?
It was at a convention years ago, and I said, Howard had kind of introduced me, and Russ. I always would see Russ at the conventions, just signing in Southern California. He was always around. I always had respect for the guys that were going out and doing, I remember seeing Dick Ayers and Gene Colan was there. Like I always respected the older guys when they would set up there at the conventions. I was like, these are like the grandfathers of
what was it?
And I got a commission from Russ, and I went to his house to pick it up. We hit it off, and I'm like, "Do you want to go out to lunch sometime?" He's like, "I'd love to," and he didn't have a car. And so we just started hanging out.
Was it true, like they said, and this was even, you were going before I was going, like nobody would come talk to these guys, right? Their booths were empty, and you just could go up there and talk to Heath or Ayers.
Especially in the early 90s. I'll talk about it when we get to Jack Kirby. It's like not that they were not, it was a different era for comics. It was a lot about the Image guys and different eras. And so they were not really as hotly met, like, because Russ isn't a guy who does like a sketch in a show. Like he has to take time, like you're doing a commission from him, he's going to have to like take time to do it or do it in advance. But yeah, a lot of these guys, Tony Deniziga, Ernie Chan, they never like huge lines, but they were there. But I was like, it was just great. I wanted to meet them all. Alfredo Alcala, like I wanted to meet them all the older guys, So
can we get to picture I'm very jealous of here?
Okay, so this is what I was saying. This is
there's Roz too, yeah.
Yeah, Roz in the background. Daffy Duck shirt, I'm not sure. So my friend Alan Morgan and I, this is in 1993, my first Comic-Con. And back then, like Alan and I were too cheap. So at San Diego Comic-Con, if you volunteered for 2 hours, they would give you a free badge. So at my first Comic-Con, was walking around and like you're on the convention floor and it's just like, wow. But it was all about Image, like Image Comics and like the booths, there was like rock booths and blasting music. And my friend Alan and I are walking around and we see sitting by himself. It wasn't official signing, but he was just sitting there. It was Jack Kirby. And my friend Alan and I were doing this bow. It was like around when Wayne's World came out. So we'll go, we're not worthy. We're not worthy. And we're like bowing down in front of him and he laughed. Probably didn't know what we were referencing, but he thought it was funny. And then I asked to get a picture with him. And my friend Alan took the photo and Roz is in the background. And this is, unfortunately it was Jack's last Comic-Con and my first Comic-Con. So what is that photograph is my favorite Kirby piece.
Yeah.
And on the left is one of my Kirby pages. It's 2001, number 8, the end page, which is the first appearance of Machine Man. And the last panel there, Birth of the Superhero. And this piece was just in Kirby Vision, which was an art show in LA at the Corey Helford Gallery. Yes, here we are. Speaking of bicycling, I brought my bicycling group to this is like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. On a Saturday, we rode out to the gallery in the Arts District. And a lot of people, like, they've heard of Jack Kirby and they've seen some of the Marvel movies, but I'm like, go through the exhibit and I want to tell, let me know what you learned, because if they did their job properly, this would work. And so, they take you through the exhibit and everyone really, really liked it. They did a really good job. Tom Kraft and Rand Hoppy and the people from the Kirby Art Museum did a great job. And Corey Helford
and Bruce Helford there too. I flew out for the opening and I'm really happy I did. It was one of the most impressive certainly comic art related shows, maybe the most impressive I've ever been to.
I think it's online. I think it's online. You can view all the pieces online if you're interested.
There's a lot of really good videos on YouTube and on the Kirby Museum Instagram account too.
Yeah. So, this was it was great. I know Bruce Helford is a huge TV writer and a great guy. And he's a big fan of the 3D comic that Kirby did in the background there. And he owns a lot of the original pages. And he always wanted to do something with Kirby at some point. This slot opened up and they got a lot of originals for it. You go through the video, it's like, it's one thing after the other. Great. It's great. Avengers #1. And it's just like, Kasra, you were there at the opening. I was unfortunately out of town. I went another time, but it was great. And I hope the hobby has more stuff like this ongoing. Only a positive.
There's no doubt it will.
Hopefully, they do a Bruce Zeck for you. You're a big fan.
Yeah, in time. We'll see. So we'll see. But that was the Kirby Vision exhibit. I think it just ended yesterday. So unfortunately, if you're in the LA area, it is gone. But I think the videos are still around.
Yep.
And my 2001 page was, thankfully, it was cool. Was in the exhibit.
Is that one that you've tried, David, tried to get off of Steve? That one's got to be special to you.
No, I mean, that's one that I won't even attempt because I'm damn sure he's not going to part with that for almost any amount. So I knew about it. I knew when he got it. I knew before he got it. I knew we were talking back and forth, but no, I didn't even give it an attempt.
Also, like, I mean, my favorite Kirby stuff that he was doing for Marvel is 2001 and Machine Man. I think his imagination is just like, wow. And like, it's artistically, some of the pages with not even Machine Man or stuff. There's just so much wild stuff going on in all those issues. Like, I love what he was doing on those two books and the 2001 movie adaptation.
Here's a good one. Let's tell us a little bit more about this piece.
So this is the cover to Chuck Norris and the Karate Commandos #1, which was done by Mike Zeck and John Beatty, kind of during their prime. You know, these guys had also done, I think, something called Captain America Annual 8 at the time. And Mike Zeck is kind of known for doing Secret Wars or something, you know.
I think that's what it was called. Yeah.
Something like that. So.
You know, the thing I noticed is on CAF, this is 97 comments on it, and it's kind of embarrassing. It doesn't have over 100 comments on it. So I just put the link in the chat if some of you people that want to go to heaven.
Yeah. I do remember one comment. I have this listed on CAF as best cover ever. And one of the comments, someone said, I thought this would be something good. And I was like,
and they meant it. And they meant it.
But that
that
comment is worth at least $50 to $100, right? If not more.
So if you haven't commented on this, like, see what everyone else did, and sort of, it's fun. I mean, the hobby does take itself a little too seriously at times, but this is like it's just a fun piece. And the comments, it's like, you know, I think it got a lot of comments right away. And back then it was like a big deal to get comments. So this one kind of exploded, and people kind of built on it. So,
all right, let's look at this one. This one's great. This one is like the jazz club in Chicago, David.
Oh, okay.
This one, I'm totally jealous of this one.
Yeah.
This I don't know anybody that wouldn't want this in their collection.
First thing I want people to notice is how Steve doesn't have a premium account. He likely doesn't have a scanner. And the close-up on the right should look so stunning, and it doesn't.
Wow. Okay. Anyway, so J. Scott Pike, I spoke about earlier that Russ and him were friends when they lived in New Jersey in the same area. And these guys were like two of the best at drawing women, and they were close friends. And I put them back together in touch on the phone. And I did talk to Jay. Well, actually, he went by Scott. And I asked him, I go, whatever happened to the dolphin art that you know? He's like, oh, I never saw it again. I never saw the interiors of the cover. DC wouldn't give me the rights to the character back then, and he was not interested in drawing any other stories. And I was like, okay. And this cover was printed in green. I'm sure you remember there we go. Someone said needs more green. Like, yeah, this is a very iconic looking comic cover. Like, the colorist did a really cool job. And I mean, it's such a simple design, but it's beautiful. It's Scott's like greatest piece. And it was on eBay, this cover, and I think it was like 10,000 buy it now or best offer. This is years ago. And it was a comic store, and there was like a phone number. They were trying to get you to call. So I called, and I talked to them, and it was on consignment, and we made an arrangement to buy it. And I got it, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. And I called Scott. This was like months later, and his wife answered, and she had said Scott had passed away like 3 months ago. I was gonna tell him I found the cover. He was gone, but too bad. But so I posted it to CAF, and it's funny. Like, I didn't get the comments, but Albert Moy and Vincent Zerzolo, or the other guy at Comic Connect, messaged me within an hour and asked if I was selling this. That's I just said no, and I didn't hear anything from them again. But obviously they were either wanted it for their own collections. I can't blame them, or they knew someone to resell it to. But this is not. It's not a nostalgic issue for me, but I definitely remember this cover, and I've read it. It was a little before my time, but it's just like top 10 in my collection.
Yeah, it's one of my.
I was, I knew Scott. I mean, he drew me a dolphin commission because like he didn't know what the art was. So like years ago, he drew me a commission. It was just, the personal connection of knowing him through the phone calls with Russ and stuff like that. And this guy was like drawing like tons of romance comics, and this piece just is like it's a wow. So it was like as bad as my scans are, like to see this in person, I hope it gets a show at some point, so people could see this. So we're looking to see if this got more comments. Or we're supposed to talk about this again.
This is the third time this.
There's 100 comments. You did it.
Okay, thank you for everyone for commenting.
And if you notice here, I removed my comment, and it still got to 100.
Jason saying, was the cover stolen? But no, I mean, obviously Russ and Scott never got stuff returned a long time ago. So I think Scott never saw it again. So I don't know. I don't know. Like they don't. They moved on to their next job. I mean, Scott and Russ were doing commercial jobs for like big money, and just like he did this story, and I don't know where the interior pages are, but the covers got with someone at some point. So I don't know.
Well,
Marvel said Vincent called me 5 times the other week to sale a few things, and the offers were. So was Vincent buying stuff from you, number one Marvel fan?
No, he just likes calling him a lot.
Okay.
What are you wearing, number one Marvel fan?
Oh, okay. This is another first appearance. The previous one was first appearance of Dolphin. Here's the thing. I was buying first appearance art, and I didn't even know what I was buying that first appearance art. I was just buying the Dolphin cover because it's amazing. This I was just buying because it was amazing. Astonishing Tales 25. I mean, I loved all these Deathlock stories. This is like, I thought Buckler was doing this stuff kind of before his time. I love all this stuff. Mm-hmm. This was on Comic Link long time ago. The funny story behind this one is Chuck Costas told Kelvin Mao to bid on it for him because Chuck was not around for the end of the auction on Comic Link. And Kelvin was asked by his wife to take out the trash and missed the ending of bidding on it, and I won it. And Chuck's been bothering me about trading it or buying it for me since.
I mean, that's happened to all of us. It's happened to all.
I know. So it's like we still joke. I'm friends with all those guys now. Like I didn't really know them as well back then, so I was like maybe a little scared they were pissed. But like they're great guys and they're lovely collectors. They have great stuff, and it's just a funny story that I heard later on. Chuck is telling me like, yeah, I was going to bid on this through Kelvin, but he missed bidding on it. Everyone's asked someone to bid on something for them, and so I just got lucky. And I talked to Buckler about this because like there was a rumor that like Perez may have done some of the work on the page, but Buckler said it was just him. And Buckler, I mean, this is Deathlock. I mean, and this is for whatever reason, this is in like the Marvel Taschen book, which is cool. I'm like, this is even my wife was impressed. She bought me the Taschen book, and like this page is in there, which is awesome because it's like Deathlock's a cult character. He's not as mainstream as we think he is, and that's why he's cool, and that's why I liked reading him. I mean, Steve, our favorite characters are some of the C and D guys.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Not the A-listers. Like I love Deathlock, So just to get a page from this issue is awesome. To get the first like story page. I mean, I love the storytelling. That's so Buckler. That like middle panel there with like the film strip. Like that's it's unbelievable. So another top 10 piece for me. Awesome. So. Bernie. Now, Bernie is a guy who, as nice as he was, he matched it with his talent. Like, there's few creators like that. He was just the nicest guy. And he lived in the LA area, and he put on CAF that he was selling like a Swamp Thing drawing with Batman. And I bought it, and I was like, "You're in LA, I could pick it up and pay you." And he's like, and him and his wife Liz were like, "Sure." And so I went over to his apartment, which is a studio. You can see in the background, it's like Frankenstein's lab. And my friend Adam and I hung out with them for like 2.5 hours. And it was just like, my friend Adam like still talks about it today. And bought a couple other things. I guess Bernie drew these like zombies. It's super detailed, this thing. these pencil drawings he did for Thomas Jane for some sort of animated project that never really got off the ground. I bought 2 different drawings. I mean, Bernie Wrightson is just, he will stand the test of time. He's the master of the macabre. And just that I got to hang out with him because he was at a lot of conventions too, and you could talk to him for a little bit, but like he didn't know who we were, and he just was happy to have us visiting. It was great. I mean, this was just, so I wanted to share this. It's like less about the art, more about just the Bernie experience, and that whole background, his whole studio was like the Frankenstein plate with like all that stuff in the background. Like he lived in that environment. It's awesome, so to like be in there and stuff. What a nice guy. I mean, did you guys ever get to meet him? I mean, as talented as he was, that's how nice he was too.
Everyone who knew Bernie will never ever forget him, ever. I'm pretty sure Steve Niles thinks about Bernie about 50 times a day still.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, awesome for Steve Niles to be such a fan of Bernie and then become his best friend. I mean, his real best friend, And I'm sure it was tough when Bernie passed away, but like, what a great dream for a guy like Steve Niles to like be so admired, such a fan of Bernie, and then to work with him on so many projects and to become so friendly with him. So I love that. I love that. Another great guy. This is Richard Sala, passed away.
David, you're a big fan.
Oh yeah, I love Richard Sala. I wish I would, back when Steve and I bought Richard Sala pages and traded them and got them back and forth, and you could talk to Richard and go back, and really, really sweetheart guy, get commissions from him. The stuff was going, I bet you Steve didn't pay, what would you pay, $200-300 for this at the most?
This was like a joke. I think this was under $100 because Richard was like I drew some of the art and then pasted it on, so I'm charging less, like those things on the right. He was like embarrassed to charge too much for his art. Everything he was selling was like low.
And he had his own little website. You could click on it and email him back and forth and talk to the guy. He was, I think about him, not like every day, but man, every time I see any of his art, I just think to myself, oh, I just wish more was coming out of the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't a guy that did conventions at a certain point, and I would take pictures of his books, like premiering at San Diego, and send them to him. But he was great at talking through emails and stuff, but he was sort of done doing out and about, like in the meeting people. But what a great guy to talk to over the years, just through emails, and a real unique imagination. I know they're trying to do I think they're doing a Night Drive reprint, which Daniel Klaus will be kind of overseeing. I think it was Richard's best friend. And this was an artist's death who I was pretty shocked by, because look, when Russ passed away, he wasn't going to get any better, and I knew Russ was going to be gone. But Richard Sala was surprised, and it was like, it sucked. So, but he left us great stuff. And this,
you got a great one. You got a great one.
Yeah. Piece chuckling. What's it? It's just like, it's so Richard everywhere. I love his black and whites.
Yeah. And now it's to get, there's some pieces here and there you can get, but you can't find stuff like this anymore, or even nice panel pages. Those are locked away with collectors, and rightfully so.
Yeah. One other story about Russ I just want to share, and I brought it up at his memorial, and Sergio Aragonis was there, and after I told the story, he like nodded. Like, Russ was in the hospital. He was not going to get any better, and he was not really responsive I was with his family, and we're just sort of, this is it. We're kind of this. He's not going to be around much longer. And he woke up and he looked at us and he just said, "Don't try any funny stuff." And then he kind of went back to sleep. And it was like, that was his last words. That's what he said. He was so, his sense of humor was around. Like, don't try any funny stuff. Like, what are we going to try? It's like, so I told that story at his memorial.
That's probably a line that would have been good to keep in the pocket at the Playboy Mansion.
Don't try any funny stuff.
Yeah.
And he looked at us and then he went back to sleep. And, a few days later, Russ Jr., his son, texted me that Russ had passed away. And I just remember that was the last thing Russ told us. So. And
I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to be rude. I'm gonna pick it up a little bit, because we still have 15 more slides and maybe less than 30 minutes here.
Okay, let's go. Okay, this is the one of two Mike Mignola covers to Conan.
Nice.
He only did 2 Conans for Marvel. We probably all had this happen before. We put in a bid that was meant to put in 4 figures, but we put in 5 figures. Has that ever happened to anyone? That's what happened. I'm not even kidding. That's what happened on this one. I put in a bid, a snipe bid on eBay for 5 figures, very high 5 figures. I won it, but it was considerably less. But I do remember, it was on probably 79,000 is what my bid was.
Wow. Yeah.
And now it's worth 79,000. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, look, Mike did 2 covers. I think this is the better one of the ones he did for Conan, and another great guy to meet in person. But like I saw, I'm amazed that I own it. There's only 2, and it definitely has this Hellboyish style. And there's the funny story of like the misbid. So
It's beautiful. Yeah. When did you get this on eBay? How far back?
I mean, I guess if you looked on CAF, it's probably within 6 months. So I don't really know.
I wanted to know how freaked out should I be by Marcus's memory? Like if you bought this like 8 years ago and Marcus remembers, I'm like, this guy's got.
Yeah, it was about 8. Yeah, it was probably about 8 years ago. And I do remember feeling bitter's remorse because I saw my bid. I'm like,
so it was a while back that you got that on eBay. Mm-hmm. And Marcus remembers. That doesn't disturb either one of you? That he remembers like what
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
For the guy that comments on everything on CAF, no, that doesn't disturb me.
It doesn't shock me at all. Not one bit.
Number 10. What do we got here?
Tim Truman, Guns of the Dragon, number 2, I think. So, anyways, I love Tim Truman. This is probably one of the first pieces of comic art I ever bought. That's why I included it. I sold some Scout Warshaman comics on eBay in around 99, and because I was done reading them and I didn't have space for my apartment. And who's the winner of my comics? Tim Truman. I'm like, what? Are you the same guy who wrote and drew this series? And so since 99, we've had email friendship. And so do you have comic art? And we arranged for me to buy this page, and he signed it to me in the upper right-hand corner. So this is one of it's framed in my house. It's probably the first piece of art I bought. I mean, I think a lot of people share their first piece, but I got this piece from Tim randomly, like because he bought comics for me on eBay. So when did I start buying comic art? Like this is in 1999.
Wow, that's lucky.
Yeah, but I think in 2005, 2006 is when I really started getting more serious about it. This was sort of casual, but it was just like So this is still in my collection. First piece.
I'm going in the next one here. Oh,
ooh. What do we want? Just like we could talk about both sides here. All right. First on the left is Nightman versus Wolverine number 0, which was published by Marvel Malibu. When Marvel bought Malibu, it helped their bankruptcy. And Nightman was a TV show that I worked on, which came out in 1997, 1998. And in the pilot, which was produced and written by Glenn Larson, who did Knight Rider, David Hasselhoff is in the pilot. So when did I
can't tell the difference. Which one's
this is San Diego Comic-Con 1997. This was back in the 90s. Like a lot of the celebrities were like on the convention floor, which they don't do now because this would be too insane. So Hasselhoff was doing like a signing and he was getting ready to leave. And I'm like, I kind of got a picture with you. I'm working with Glenn Larson on Nightman. They were actually shooting my episode in Chula Vista, which is like south of San Diego. And he saw the hat and he's like, all right, one more photo. And I got this picture with David Hasselhoff, who's a super tall guy. Like I'm tall. And like Hasselhoff was like, I don't know how he fit in kit, but he did. And so this is cool because like I got a page from the comic of a character that I worked on. I don't think many people watched the Nightman show. It was on for 2 seasons. Donald Trump is actually in an episode playing himself, which is completely weird. But I was a huge fan growing up, like Glenn A. Larson, Donald P. Belisario and Stephen J. Cannell. Like, I watched all their shows, so this was awesome to like work with Glenn Larson, post Knight Rider, on the show that he did based on the Malibu comic Nightman. And Steve Englehart actually wrote 2 episodes that which was cool. I thought that Glenn included the comic writer as one of the writers on the show. So, and it was for Tribune Entertainment, which was located in Chicago.
Right.
So that's a page from Nightman versus Wolverine. I got to meet the Hasselhoff.
Was that when Trump was still a Democrat?
He probably was, actually.
Yeah.
This is what I was talking about. Christian Gossett on the left,
Aaron
Gray in the middle, Steve Crow on the right. This is in the summer of I missed Comic-Con. My episode was filming. Chris directed it. Aaron Gray was, and the only Comic-Con I missed, 2019. And I was like, well, Comic-Con came to Sofia, Bulgaria. I mean, and we gave her an outfit which is very much like Wilma Deering in Buck Rogers, which was created by Glenn Larson. So Aaron and I had lots of talks about Glenn as well. So this is, that's Goss on the left. And this is, the one Comic-Con I missed, but it was we had a good time.
Worth it. Worth missing it.
Right. She, she's not only a beautiful person and she's just super cool. It was just, a lot of these people that I've worked with over the time, it's just great to talk to them. And they're so they love that you love their careers, and all the random stuff. It's great. It's great. So I wanted to include that photo. This is the first appearance of, what is this? Blue Origin in panel 2. Jeff Bezos' spaceship. Is that right? No. First appearance of Star-Lord. Sorry. This is the first appearance of Star-Lord. Again, Steve Gahn. This is from Marvel Preview number 4. I got made fun of by a friend of mine for spending $650 for this page.
Was that me?
No. I'm not going to say who, but he wouldn't care. But it was he's like, you're nuts. I go, I love the Marvel magazines, and I can't find any pages from this issue because this one guy on CAF owns them all, and he won't respond. This one came up. I'm like $650. I'm like, I'll take it. Again, I mean, I'm accidental first appearance guy. I knew it was that issue, but so. And if you look in the story, this is the first time he's wearing the costume.
I mean, though, when you were buying these first appearances or accidental nobody gave a shit whether it was a first appearance or not, and especially didn't care about Star-Lord.
Oh, no way. I got made fun of for paying, I'm sure $650 was too much. It was probably like a $250 page. But, and it was, Steve Gahn, and it was Steve Englehart was the writer, and, it was a lot of the Marvel magazines, some of the art, look, the Rocket Raccoon has come out of those magazines. There's some, stuff that I liked reading all those magazines. So, yeah, but exactly. I was not actively looking for first appearance stuff. It was just I wanted the page from this black and white issue. So.
It's just cool. It's just a cool page. If you like sci-fi, whether it's superhero or whatever, it's just cool looking from that aspect.
Poke your eye with that. Yep. More than your eye. So yeah, it's and Steve Gahn I thought it was a good artist. It was just a weird, that's who's the co-creator of Star-Lord. Did you know that? It was Steve Gahn, Steve Englehart. So that's what this page is from. Oh, another first appearance page, Raphael. Now, this one I knew because, because this issue was, Raphael was the first of the miniseries. I bought it directly from Kevin Eastman through his website. I think he was asking $5,000 for these pages, but if you join the fan club, you got 20% off. So I got this one directly from him. And years ago, maybe in the late 90s, I was at Comic-Con. And, this is another issue I bought. I think this one came out in between Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 3 and 4. So this is actually kind of issue 3.5. And I think someone owns all of 1 and 2, Eric Roberts. So, it's hard to find anything early vintage from Eastman and Larry. And I was at Comic-Con in the late 90s, and someone introduced me to Kevin Eastman and said I worked on Sliders. And Kevin Eastman was a huge fan of Sliders, and he was all couldn't believe it. I kept thinking to myself, dude, you're a legend. I just wrote one episode of Sliders. It was kind of funny how excited he was to meet someone who wrote on Sliders. I'm like, you created one of the biggest independent franchises ever, So it was funny. So happy to own a page from this.
Steve, sorry, how long have you had this one?
Again, if you look on CAF, was when Kevin was selling them on his website.
Yeah.
And his first appearance at Casey Jones, I don't, whenever he was selling them.
10 plus years ago?
I don't feel like you've had it that long, Steve.
No, maybe like 10. Gil's asking how much. So Kevin was originally asking for these pages $5K. And then if you join the fan club, it was like 20% off. So I was like, seems kind of high. I was like, I think I'd spend like more on like a Weapon X page through Windsor Smith was like the same price. I was like, I don't know how else to get them because the artists own them. So it was like, whatever, I'll pay it. It's going to Kevin.
Just curious, these are aging okay? I mean, this isn't a craft tint board. This is wash or Copic or something for the midtones, right?
It is craft tinty, but it does it looks fine in person. I'm doing fine. They're small-ish.
They're all under his bed. He hasn't looked in years.
Right. Yeah. Vault. He's got a nice vault too.
He's sold out of them, but obviously for a lot of us, the Ninja Turtles is a huge deal. So.
Oh yeah.
So that's where that one came from.
All right, let's go on to the next one. We got another lady here.
Okay. So this is another rando first appearance. Now, I was a big fan. A lot of us were of the Spidey and His Amazing Friends cartoon series, and this is just a page that Dan Spiegel did. I bought art from Dan Spiegel directly, some war and horror stuff, and it's funny. I was always on his Christmas card list.
Oh, I did. I was too. I got a Christmas card.
Yeah. I think if you bought anything from Spiegel, like you ended up on his Christmas card list. But what a nice guy to like actually do something like that. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This was on eBay at some point. I'm like, oh yeah, the one shot that was based on the comic series, which I guess first appearance of Firestar because this is the animated show. But then they reintroduced her in Uncanny X-Men. But this predates that. But this one's got, everyone's on it. I'm like, Spider-Man's on it, Iceman's on it, and Firestar. I think when they were originally developing the show, they wanted Johnny Storm, but they wouldn't give him the rights, so they created Firestar, if I remember correctly. So, this is like, for me, an A panel page with everyone on it. Dan signed it at some point. Dan wasn't the one selling it on eBay, but, I guess I'm just showing off my first appearance stuff, my accidental first appearance collection.
Sometimes you trip and you get a first appearance.
Right. But for a lot of us, like we totally remember this cartoon series, Spidey and His Amazing Friends.
Well, these first appearance pages are going to help you get that Chuck Norris on the cover of Heritage Catalog.
I guess that's if we're going to do it that way, we'll do it. All right, Frank Robbins.
Nice.
What else is there to say about Frank Robbins? Now this was rando, like
anti-gravity boobs. Yeah.
I sent it to, I did a weekly flip. And I have the entire issue of The Shadow #5, which is Frank's first issue on the series, which was probably very jarring for readers coming off of Kaluta. But he didn't pencil and ink his own stuff for Marvel, but like DC he did, and like it is awesome. It's great. So on eBay was the complete story, and I was the only bidder, and I got that. And then like within the next year, the cover came up. And it was in another country, but it was being sold on eBay. And I was like, this is amazing. I could put the whole cover and the thing together. So I got this, and it had some glue stains on it from like a stat at the bottom. So I got it restored. I'm not going to say who it was, but while it was at the restore, the FBI invaded his home. So this for a little while.
I don't want to mention any names.
But this was in the possession of the FBI for a little while. Anyways, the restorer was very friendly via emails and did return this to me. And he was unable to do the work for obvious reasons. And I did use another restorer to clean up the glue stain that was at the bottom. But the complete story was already awesome. And then just to have the cover and everything, I'm like, it's Frank Robbins when he was penciling and inking his own stuff in this style, early 70s. It's the best. And I think a lot of us could say that we didn't like Frank Robbins, and I was one of them. Back when we were readers, it was very jarring his stuff, especially like on Captain America and stuff like that, coming off of like Buscema, Sal. So I think a lot of us have changed our tune on Frank Robbins, So
He has an acquired taste for sure.
Again, there's another like top 10 piece for sure. Just
Oh,
and
yeah.
I count like this in the story as like one piece. Like, you know, I count complete stories as one piece, but if you have the whole issue, it's the same thing. It's got to stay together. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Wild Dog #1, another first appearance, right? Wild Dog, but I grew up playing hockey. I always thought this character's costume was just outrageous and awesome, and I read this when it came out. Max Allen Collins was the writer. I've run into him at Comic-Con, and I'm like, yeah, people always talk to you about what was the movie that he did based on his graphic novel. But I'm like, I want to talk to you about Wild Dog. So and Terry Beatty.
I remember
Terry Beatty was selling this stuff, and I actually missed out on the #1 cover. I got some other covers from Terry, and later on there was a collector that through CAF, I just always would casually check. I'm like, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, like I'm a Wild Dog collector, and I have these other covers, and sure enough, eventually over time, he sold it to me. So it was a 4-issue miniseries with one special, and I have 3 of the covers from the miniseries and the cover from the special. But yeah, just this shirt, and he's like a Punisher knockoff, vigilante, no superpowers, the hockey mask, everything's hilarious. Road to Perdition. So Max Allen Collins, it's like asking Dick about Spider-Man. This is also Max Allen Collins. You could see in the upper right there, he wrote the story.
Steve, David, you didn't read that one either, right?
I did got the first or second issue.
Oh, how was it?
I was gonna say I felt like the costume was better than the series.
Wow.
Does that ring true, Steve? Like
absolutely. I mean, that's what drew me to it when I saw that. I'm like, what is it? Jason Voorhees? Like, it was the Punisher. I mean, yeah, that. He never really asked Terry Beatty, like, how did they decide to go with this? And he has camouflage pants. I'm like, how did they pick this whole? I don't know. I mean, it's just hilarious that I do have the concept art. It was called Red Dog. The original character was called Red Dog. It's in my CAF, in my Wild Dog gallery, but the Red Dog is the original character name. And, he still had the same costume and look, but for whatever reason, they couldn't use the name Red Dog, or they decided to change it to Wild Dog. So, I mean, yeah, like Marcus says, you can't possibly live up to the design. And that happens. It's like Jack of Hearts. You can't possibly live up to the design. All right. I have a wide-ranging collection, but I love awesome art. And this is like Val Mayrick he's up there with any of the horror artists on this couple issues of supernatural thrillers. Dan Adkins inked this. But it's just like, Steve, you love this as well. I mean,
yeah, we've talked about this more than once.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where in the comic it's colored and whatever, but the black and white, it's just like, it's awesome. All the detail, the bandages, and I mean, Val Mayrick at this time was up there with he was up there with all the horror artists at the time.
This might be the best Living Mummy panel page out there. I would say.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's very beautiful lighting.
Yeah, it's great. It's really well done. Another oddball character, and I do have a page from issue 5 by Buckler as his first appearance of I have a lot of first appearances that don't really matter. So,
yeah, I don't see Living Mummy the TV show coming anytime soon. So,
yeah. And then as a reader, like I like like those oddball supernatural thrillers and Marvel Premiere and Marvel 2-in-1, and like the different characters, different stories every week. So. Who knows if Living Mummy will ever make an appearance? All right, Howard Chaykin. This is when he was working for Atlas Seaboard, 1975. It's very pre-Dominic Fortune. This stuff's great. I mean, yeah, if you're like a fan of Howard's work, like Howard doesn't like to see a lot of his old work, but I don't think he would care to see this one. It's great. And I don't know where I got it, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great artists that worked for Atlas Seaboard when they were stealing artists from Marvel, and there's some really kick-ass stuff. So that's what this is from. Scorpion #1. Another thing that Howard did was I after San Diego Comic-Con, I went to meet him for lunch, and I go up to his place in Ventura, and I get to his house, and who else is there? Is the Simonsons, Walt and Louise Simonson. And so the four of us go to lunch. I was like, who doesn't belong here? Amazing. Yeah, it was great. Super fanboy to go just have lunch with those three people and just listen to them talk. So this is the Sergeant Rock versus the Army of the Dead. This is probably the most modern piece that I've included in here. This is written by Bruce Campbell, which was a 6-issue series that Eduardo Rizzo did for DC.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruce Campbell is someone I worked with. I've been a fan of Bruce Campbell back with Evil Dead, like a lot of us, and then met him through work. He directed some episodes, like Chris Gossett, like directed episodes that I wrote, and we just became friends. And I'm still in touch with him. And when Rizzo, the brother, or whoever has the CAF, was selling pages from this story, I bought one through the family, and it was through CAF pretty recently. It's a 6-issue series.
It's a fun series. It's worth getting. Probably getting dollar bins now, but it's worth getting.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a trade also. So. Now we're.
If you want to see Sergeant Rock fight zombies, that is.
Yeah, it's all about that. Oh, Rom. Okay, so
This one.
I mean, Rom had a lot of inkers work with Sal, but I thought Aiken and Garvey were the best. I mean, so this is one of my. I have a bunch, probably like 20 pages of Rom. Some of them are just Sal doing pencils and inks early on, and this Rom was this. It's amazing that a busted, a toy that was a dud turned into a comic book series that lasted 75 issues and 4 annuals, and had so many guest stars. And Bill Mantlo wrote them all. It's just there's nothing ever like that. That a toy that Marvel licensed for the comic became way bigger than the toy ever did. And it's just, I think it's become nostalgic for a lot of people. And Ditko worked on some of the later issues, and there's just some great art and stuff like that. But this, I don't know who Sal's favorite inker was on himself, but like Aiken and Garvey, like it's awesome.
This is one of those instances where the penciler takes a far back seat, in my opinion, to the inkers. Like there's plenty of not plenty, but there's quite a bit of Sal Buscema ROM pages out here, but you want the Aiken and Garvey ones by far, in my opinion. Those are the best.
Yeah. Now, some of my favorite artists did all their pencil and ink themselves. Russ Heath, Joe Kubert, Ditko. But obviously, when an inker on this caliber steps up, Scott Eater in the house, been hiding out all along. Thank you, Scott, for the compliment on this page. Yeah, so I own a bunch of them, but I remember getting this when I was like, and it looks kick-ass in person. No, yeah, the Ditko ROM stuff, P. Craig Russell, I think, was inking him, and it's great. Another random, I mean, I don't know if anyone wrote Ditko a letter about ROM, maybe Andrew Allen did, but like, how he got involved, the editors, I guess, are just, the series was kind of coming to an end, and, Sal liked Sinnott. He hated Aiken Garvey. That makes sense. It's kind of like John Buscema hating Alfredo Alcala. I do have a Sal issue inked by Sinnott. It's with the Galactus cameo. That's an earlier issue. This one's like issue 42. It's amazing that something ran 75 issues and a toy was like a serious dud when it came out. And I think, maybe Rom makes an appearance. I think they're doing an artist edition of this. They finally got the rights together because, like, for a while.
Oh, I'm betting, and they're gonna make a Marvel Legends figure of them. You're gonna see them in comics soon.
Yeah, I see stuff enough. There's too many people that know who this is, so I wanted to include one Rom thing. Now, this you probably wouldn't know. This is Joe Kubert doing a Vigilante cover. I own a lot of Kubert war covers, and you could see a lot of Joe's work everywhere. But like this, when this came up for sale through the estate, and I was just like, look how good Joe is. And this is done in, I want to say, like, when did he, I'm looking at the bottom left, is it like 90 or 88 when he did this? I mean, he's obviously doing like a Toth style, but this is just.
It doesn't scream out Joe Kubert the second you look at it until you get a good visual of the hands and the feet. And
the boot and the shirt. But like, I don't know, like Ross Andrew, like some of the older artists were like kind of working on Vigilante like later in the series, Gil Kane, and some of it's like really awesome. So this is just I wanted to show a different Joe Kubert cover than his usual like horror, that stuff he was doing for
I dig it. I dig it.
I love it. It looks like Kubert telling the young guns to hold back a second.
Yeah, and this one, I mean, a lot of us like the Vigilante series and enjoying his appearance on the Peacemaker TV show. It's just funny that obviously James Gunn is a fan of this character. It's like a cult character, like a lot of his stuff. The art's selling pretty high, but this one, I just got lucky. It wasn't very expensive. I think maybe because people were like, it doesn't really look like Joe Kubert, but it does, and so it's not an issue I remember. But I'm like, this image is just.
That's a great pickup. No, that's a strong image, and to someone who loves Kubert, that is a particularly interesting image to see. Honestly,
yeah. I mean, I wish I could like wonder why. It's not around like why he decided to do it like this. I mean, I don't know. Maybe editorial said do whatever you want, and for whatever reason he did it like this. I don't know. He didn't do the interiors, just did the cover.
Yeah, you don't typically see him using such stark blacks or negative space.
Yeah. So I don't know. So something different. Okay, Alcala. Like this is him penciling and ink his own stuff. Like I don't know who would take the time to do the backgrounds like that. Those clouds. I mean, it's just like the line work is
Franklin Booth.
Insane. But how many comics did he do?
Depends on what you call a comic, but absolutely none.
Yeah. Then that character on the upper left, like he's drawn too on like vellum and then placed onto the thing. So the page rate's the same for these guys, and I mean, he wasn't slumming it on this story. Now I brought this up last because I want this is I'm missing the last page from this story. So if anyone has the last page to Weird War Tales, number 20 by Alcala, let me know. But Alcala is just I like his inking on Buscema and Conan, but obviously John Buscema was not a fan. But this guy was another guy I saw draw at I saw him at Comic-Con in the 90s and he was still like drawing. But like you look at some of his stuff, like how much time he would spend on the page. Russ was the same way. They wouldn't slum it. They're getting paid the same amount on this page as like a John Byrne blank page from She-Hulk.
Steve, send me a 600 DPI of this one. All right.
I was just gonna say, Steve, I will fly out. We'll rent a scanner. We'll stay at your house.
And I have a complete ghost story that he drew around the same time. But I'm telling you, like when people come over, I pull those out, those two stories. I'm like, you guys.
No, I'm going to bring a scanner. We're just going to scan all week.
Also, they were drawing on the paper was kind of different. It's kind of like that flimsy. It's like a different texture paper that some of the Filipino artists use for some of their stories. So,
yep.
All right, we jammed all those in. We made it in less than 2 hours. Thank God. Steve, great surprise. Oh wait, yeah. Okay. I forgot. I guess there's more. Anyways, you all know who Seth Fisher is. Like I met Seth, I guess, in Comic-Con 1997. And he drew this sketch for me. This is when I was not collecting comic art, but I was directing sketches. Seth actually drew himself on that shirt. He was doing Happy Dale for DC. And then cut to 2002, and he was drawing Flash Time Flies for a friend of mine, John Rosem, who was the writer.
Oh, John. Yeah.
Yep. Good friend of mine who was a writer with me on Team Knight Rider. You all remember that one. The TV show. John and I became friends on Team Knight Rider. 1997. So John and I were trying to put each of our names in a story and so John included me in Flash Times Fly as the villain, the Blur. And I think is the next piece from the Blur. Yes. It's the death of Steve Crozier. So at the end of the story, and so when I originally was trying to get a page of this, Seth died tragically, too young. Long time ago, and the mother, and I think Jeff Singh, who I didn't know at the time, had some art, was selling some art, and I contacted Jeff through CAF, and I said, "This page is like that's me, the writer. I didn't know Seth, but my writer friend included me in the story, and since I have a very unique last name, Jeff was like, I totally believe your story. I hear a lot of stuff about people trying to get art, but like obviously this is you, and I'm going to talk to Seth's mom, and we're going to get you this page." And this was another page. This was, I don't know where I got this one, maybe when Felix was selling some other pages. But this is near the end of the story where the Blur, a.k.a. Steve Crozier, passes away. And you could see it. what's happening. So if you look up DC Flash Time Flies, like it says like the Blur, Steve Brazier. So I'm in like maybe I'm like it's an Elseworld story. So it's kind of fun. Got myself into a comic.
Your mom
Seth
was probably glad it didn't look like you too.
Seth obviously had didn't know what I looked like, but just kind of drew some other guy. But John put it in there, and somehow it got cleared through DC, and it ended up in the story. Because I don't think you're allowed to put someone's name in there if there's only like one person with that name. But whatever, I'm not going to sue them. So I own a couple pieces from that story that character is in.
There's one more image.
Yes. I believe this is the first appearance of Wood God.
And you could smell this page.
Yes. So I think I have a whole thing on CAF writing about a write up about this page and hoping that Marvel makes a movie and that Stan Lee's cameo in the film is his cologne. Like that's not like an AI. Like Stan does have a signature cologne, and it is being sold. And you know what? I smelled that cologne. You know what it smells like? Jack Kirby's tears.
I was hoping you were going to say it smells like Wood God.
No, it doesn't smell like Wood God. No. So anyways, I don't know. There is Stan Lee cologne. So Wood God
or Jack Kirby's sweat. Yeah.
Jack Kirby's sweat, possibly. So anyways, this is also Giffen Jansen, I think, who drew it. Marvel Preview 31, I think. Another just weird random character that
I think he was only in like
Marvel's best all new superheroes. Actually, the cover was by Kirby. It's just crazy. Like they asked Kirby to do the cover, and then who is this character? Bill Mantlo created him. Wood God. It's like now that James Gunn isn't working for Marvel anymore, like I don't think Wood God's popping up. Maybe in Deadpool 4, but other than that, I don't think Wood God's showing up anywhere.
There's plenty. There's time for that. Don't worry about it.
So,
James Gunn will be back at Marvel before you know it.
Yeah, Ode to Wood God. So that's this one. Another random first appearance page. Steve, do you have a page of Wood God?
No, I never got one. I didn't even buy one and sell one, which is typically what I do. It's like, I had this and I sold it.
I think like pure Kirby collectors, like that cover, like no one ever wants to own that cover. Like it's like the least desired Kirby cover.
That a lot of that Bronze Age stuff is probably pretty expensive, but I think you could get Wood God for a song still. I don't think it's going to be too hard to pull that out of somebody's gallery.
Yeah, I'm sure Jack was like, "What is it? How much is it paying?" It's like, okay.
Kanigher.
Oh, okay. What did Russ say about Kanigher, if anything? It was nothing positive, to be honest with you. He was a pretty disliked guy by a lot of the artists. I actually have a piece that Joe Kubert drew, and it's all the DC artists in a Jeep, and on their helmet it says, Andrew, Novick, Heath, Kubert, and then there's one helmet on the side of the truck with a bullet hole
in it.
Yeah, and the initials are RK. So that was Joe. Okay, so look. I mean, he was very prolific, and I was like, wow, this guy's created Enemy Ace and Sergeant Rock, and he wrote all these stories. But the other artists that work with him were not fans, and obviously Joe is how that even got published. The RK helmet with a bullet hole in it, like, is on the side.
Because everybody knew he was a dick, so they were like, "We're going to let this go." I mean, that's how it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So
I think Kanigher. Yeah. I mean, Russ had stories about him, but there were nothing positive. So. Good question. Any other Stanley Cologne? Will it get you laid? Says Andrew. I'm like, can't answer that. So I don't know.
So that's it. Jason wants everyone to know that he got his first MODOK page this week. Just a little bit of open business there. Otherwise, I think we're good. We're done.
He popped his MODOK.
We did it. Steve, thanks for coming in and hanging out. It was a lot more comfortable. I was pretty nervous about this.
I knew that. That's why I was like, I'm not picking up the phone.
Is anyone listening to this? It's I could just talk to you guys I love talking to you guys. So this is just good by itself,
Thanks for coming on, Steve, and and David especially, because I've been sick for a week. I didn't know if I'd hold up, and I'm really starting to fade, but Steve made me feel more comfortable too, and that's probably never happened in your life, Steve.
No. I've never made
Other people having less anxiety because of you.
I've never made anybody feel more comfortable in my life. It's been the opposite.
That's great.
You're creeping me out, dude, is usually what I hear.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for wearing pants. That's another line that you hear a lot too. All right, guys. That was fun. That was a good run.
Mike. Yeah, when Bill's gone again, Castro, just bring Steve and I back. We can talk
I will.
about whatever you
I
want.
will. Or I might just like do a parallel broadcast when Bill does stuff and see like who gets more views.
Oh.
Okay. All right. I will probably talk to both of you tomorrow.
Yeah, you can. I'll drop the stream, but you can stay on, guys, for a second.
Okay.
You don't have to click.
All right. Thanks for everyone for coming through, and thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Thursday, I'm doing the CAF update. Believe it or not, that should be weird. See you guys then.
Okay.